It has been 10 years since I last sat for a job interview, but here I was at the age of 44 looking to continue with the work I love. My name is Alex Price, and I am a mechanical design engineer. I'm new to the area, and the truth is this company used to be one of my biggest rivals. I have a feeling they will offer me a job when they see what I can offer them. Soon, it will hopefully all come together. I have to get rid of my cheating wife. I met Holly in 1993, and even now I can picture her from back then. She was beautiful and so confident. I, on the other hand, was shy and introverted. I guess being raised by a domineering jerk of a mother would do that to a guy. She was also ably assisted by the ugly sisters. Their names were Megan and Anna, and they bullied me all through my childhood. Megan was the oldest and 13 years my senior. Anna was 10 years older. I guess I was a mistake and not planned, and they all blamed my birth on the separation of my parents. My dad left home in 1977 when I was 5 and never returned. Only recently have I found out the truth. Come on in, Mr. Price. It's good to meet you. I was immediately drawn to the warmth of Robert Williams, the owner of Sutton Hydraulics. He was a complete contrast to the jerk I was leaving. Thank you for seeing me, to Mr. Williams, I said cordially. I took a seat in his impressive-looking office as he sat opposite me and began to speak. I'm surprised you're leaving Walker Engineering. And Mr. Price, please call me Alex, and I can't wait to be out of there. I replied. They're doing great work there. Mr. Price, Alex, sorry. He was still looking at me with a sense of confusion on his face. Well, I'm doing great work there. Mr. Williams. Please call me Robert, he interjected. As I was saying, I've been working hard the last 10 years, and it's been my designs that have driven the company forward, all to no real gratitude and recently to absolutely no respect. He looked at me seriously for a few seconds. I had let nothing on about my situation, and for now, I was willing to keep it quiet. Well, without doubt. I want you here, Alex. I can offer you the package you have asked for, which accounts for a few £1,000 pay rise. But you also suggested on the phone that if you could help win us a few more contracts, you would like to be paid commission. Is that right? He asked, furrowing his brow. Yes, I hope it's not anything illegal. I'll have no part in that, he said. I raised my hand to assure him of my honest intentions. I have a lot to do with our customers. I speak to them on a daily basis. I know how much they are charged for our products, and I know the contracts pretty much inside out. I started to explain to a studious-looking Robert Williams. How would anybody know if we offer a better deal, and with my designs and your team here, we can become the top dogs? In the game, what do you think I offered? Confidently, he held out his hand. And I shook it. I looked him in the eye and could see an honest and decent man stood before me. Another part of the plan was completed. Now back to my cheating wife, Holly. We met at Kingston University in South London. She was in her final year of a creative writing degree. and I was finishing my master's in mechanical engineering and design. Like I said, I was way too shy to approach. And she was never short of attention from men. She was 5'5" with brown hair and big brown eyes, the type you could get lost in. She had a nice body, but I knew she was out of my league. The guys who chased her were all outgoing and popular. To my surprise, one of her friends got talking to me at a party, and Holly came over and joined us. I had little experience of women, and I think being humble and bashful made me attractive to her. I managed to build up the courage to ask her out and began dating. I am not ashamed to say that she took my virginity, but after around 6 months of dating, I heard a rumor that she had been screwing around with other guys. I had no way to prove it and was afraid to confront her. Holly was a spoiled child. Her parents spoiled her and her sister Caroline, and most of our relationship, I had to put up with her acting like a princess. If she did not get her own way, she would create a fuss. And she wouldn't hesitate in creating problems in public, which just caused me embarrassment. My friends couldn't stand her and thought I should get rid of her. But I fell in love, and I had never really experienced that before. When we graduated, we both found jobs and managed to find a flat outside of Southampton in Hampshire. Her family were from there, and I had long since stopped having anything to do with mine. We were married a year later, and the following year we welcomed Sophie to the world, shortly followed by Ava. A couple of years later, Holly loved being a mother, and everything between us seemed to be great. From then on, I got promoted a few times, and then 10 years ago, I started working for Walker Engineering. The increased salary and bonuses helped us to save for a better house. But like most people in the world, 2008 was a bad year. The economic downturn meant that many people lost their jobs. Contracts were harder to win. So we all had to up our game and work longer hours for no extra money. It was at this time, when both the girls were full-time at school, that I realized Holly was having an affair with some guy from our old university. I was so focused on work that by the time it ended, I was none the wiser who he was. My best friend, Toby, thought it was a guy in her class that had moved nearby. I confronted her once about it, and she just laughed in my face and told me to stop being stupid. But I could tell she was lying. The fact I was able to keep my job and the good salary. Good salary meant I was in a great position to buy a nice house. Holly was always on at me to own a house that befitted our status, whatever that meant, but I conceded, as I always did, and we managed to buy a beautiful detached 5-bed house in Southampton. It was a buyer's market at the time, so we got a good price, even though the mortgage was a little steep. One thing I did do that was out of character was to open a new savings account in my name only. I only put my end-of-year bonus in it, and with me being the sole breadwinner and the one responsible for all the finances and banking. Since I don't think Holly would have known about it, even if I waved the receipts under her nose. In retrospect, this turned out to be one of the best things I could have done. I needed some protection because I was not sure if Holly planned on dumping me if the old lover ever returned. After that time, everything seemed to go back to a semblance of normality, and the girls were always a top priority for me. I encouraged them in education and made sure I spent plenty of time with them at weekends. In fact, it was me who took them to dance classes, concerts, and to the zoo on more occasions than I can remember. Holly always seemed too busy on her coffee outings with her other spoiled and lazy friends. I rarely socialized with the other husbands, but we all seemed to be henpecked and under the thumb to varying degrees. My friends used to sing under my thumb "By the Rolling Stones" to me when I had to cancel plans in favor of whatever Holly wanted to do. Even at work, the guys on the factory floor would make comments about my marital situation, especially Holly's control over me. It was only a few months ago that it all came to a head. Eva had just left for university, and for the first time in 18 years. Holly and I were alone. Both the girls were attending our old alma mater, and as I finished unpacking Ava's belongings into the apartment she would be sharing with her sister, she turned to me and asked why I was even with their mother. I was gobsmacked, as she was always such a quiet girl like her old dad. Until I heard she's screwing around with Henry Walker at your company, Ava said. I can remember the tears in her eyes even now as she spoke. It was news to me, but I was not surprised. All these years I could have investigated her affairs, and never did for fear of breaking up the family and my girls suffering for it, and resenting me like my sisters did my dad. I allowed her to cuckold me because the alternative did not bear thinking about. I still loved her, but I loved what we had created even more. This news did a number of things to me. Firstly, I realized for the first time the level of animosity felt by my girls towards their mother was far greater than I could ever have imagined. And they loved and respected me, but I knew they were disappointed I hadn't taken a tougher stance with Holly. Secondly, it brought up old feelings I felt towards the women in my life whilst growing up, and how that contributed to my weaknesses. Finally, I realized at work I was being talked about and laughed at openly by the staff, and most noticeably by Henry Walker, who just happened to be the nephew of the owner, Jack, and the man cuckolding me. I did not know what to do, but I knew I couldn't go on allowing this, especially now my youngest daughter was aware of the ridicule I was receiving at the hands of Holly. I knew I had to confront her. My heart was racing as I was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for Holly to return home. When she finally appeared, I found I was unable to speak again. She just looked at me in a way I can only describe as apathy and with contempt. She said nothing to me as she emptied her bags into the cupboards. Finally, I spoke. "Are you having an affair, Holly?" She turned to face me, slightly blushing, but with no hesitation she replied, "I wouldn't call it an affair, darling." I was shocked and sickened by her admission, and yet waited silently in anticipation of her explanation of how screwing another man was not classed as an affair. "You are a wonderful man, Alex. You're a great provider and you are my best friend, but there are things you cannot provide me, and I'm not ashamed to say I want it all," she said bluntly and openly. "So that means you're cheating on me," I said, dismayed by her brazen approach to infidelity. "Only my body," she said, not my heart or my mind. Alex, that belongs to you. My head was spinning and my stomach was in knots. The sheer, unabashed cheek of what she was saying left me speechless. I never deny you love, Alex, and all I'm doing is exploring with a couple of younger guys, she admitted. What? I screamed. I never raised my voice, and my reaction took her aback. She walked around the table and took a seat opposite me. Don't shout at me, Alex, she said, regaining her composure. You admit to cheating on me with 2 guys, and I'm supposed to be quiet. I replied, I love you, Alex, but this is how things are going to be. I'll live it, or I'll leave and be with them anyway, she said, issuing me both a threat and an ultimatum. I just sat looking at her when her face softened. I thought for a minute she had seen the hurt in my face. Everyone does it these days, Alex. My friends have had flings with younger men, and they say it makes the marriage better, she said. I was in shock. I was struggling to absorb it all before, but now Holly was actually trying to justify her adultery by telling me all her friends were cheats too. As for the notion that it would make our marriage better, was contemptuous at best. She did not care for the marriage or me, only the comfort and security I could provide. I spoke again. So I can have another woman. Is that what you're saying? Holly. She looked at me for a few seconds and then laughed in my face. I sat in silence as she continued to laugh before trying to control herself. Yeah, right. Alex. Come on, be serious. You struggle to speak to women you have known for years. What chance are you going to have to chat someone else up? She was openly mocking me while continuing to giggle, and I felt embarrassed and ashamed, but she refused to let up. This is how it's going to be, Alex, so don't ruin a good thing. I'm still your wife. I still love you, and I still come home to you every night. Do not mess up your life by complaining about it or doing something you will regret. She left me at the table contemplating what had just happened to my life, to my world. She was so open about her activities that I realized she did not care for me one little bit. I did not care if her friends were all cheating whores, but that did not give her the right to be one. Not only that, but she actually had the audacity to threaten me. I was angry. That night, I slept in the spare room. I couldn't face being anywhere near her, but around midnight, Holly woke me up and asked me why I wasn't coming to bed. Was she really this deluded? I knew she was a spoiled jerk, but really... Oh, come on, Alex, get with it. This is the way the world works now. You're just acting like an old man, she said. I said nothing. I could sense her presence, still on the landing, looking into the spare room. Oh, suit yourself. Alex, you'll come back to bed soon. I know. You deny me nothing, and you know as well as I do. I'll get my own way, she said confidently. In reality, she was right. But what had I ever done in a 22-year relationship that suggested anything other than my unbridled loyalty and willingness to go along with everything she said and wanted? It was public knowledge that I was under her thumb and henpecked, and now it was well known amongst her friends and my work colleagues that I was a cuckold too. I did not sleep a wink, so I decided to head downstairs and watch some TV. There was a show on about celebrities who trace their family tree, and although a lot of it flew past me, it did get me to thinking about my own family. I had no contact with my mother or sisters, but started to think back to my dad. I remembered so little about him. Did he have family? He must have had. Why did he leave? And was it, as my mom said, that he abandoned us? Before I left for university, ik zie tenstally a pausen performance. I had heard from my brother-in-law that my dad had died years ago, but my sisters denied any knowledge of it. It was pretty much the time I decided to cut them out of my life. At the following day, I was up and out before Holly emerged from our room. The things she said to me were still racing through my mind, and I desperately tried to focus on something more positive just to get me through the day. I started to think about the TV show from the previous night, and I thought about doing some research on my father. The girls no longer needed me as much, and my wife was off doing God knows what, so maybe getting some answers to who and what my father was. Father, it might actually help me and occupy my time as well. Good morning, Alex. I turned to see who spoke and was confronted with Henry Walker. With this mug look on his face, as though he was about to burst into laughter at any minute, just made my blood boil. I just looked at him and said nothing. "How's your wife?" he asked, openly mocking me. I heard a few giggles by the coffee machine from grown men. I just looked at them as they stood their ground. I made my way past them as they continued to chuckle at my expense. I felt like the whole world knew my business, and even the boss's secretary. Olivia seemed to find my situation laughable and open to mockery. "Can I get you anything, Mr. Price? A pair of balls, maybe?" Incommodo, I looked up at her. "What did you just say?" I asked, glaring into her eyes. She shifted her feet and walked right up to me. "I told you there were no calls," she said, trying to stifle her laughter. I walked into my office and sat at my desk. My day had started off in the worst possible way, and now I was a laughingstock at work as well as home. I tried my best to focus on my project, but the anger within me refused to abate. I decided to start looking into my father. All I knew was that he was born in Cambridgeshire and left us at the age of 38 in 1977, so I searched for family history sites in that area. After only a 30-minute search, I discovered that there were 14 people named James Price in Cambridgeshire who were born in 1939. I knew he might have died years before I went to university, so I was able to narrow it down to 3 possible people. I decided I did not have the time to go searching for each one, so I placed a message on genealogy websites in each of the towns I had found. As I sat in my office thinking about the last 24 hours, I was called by my boss, Jack. He wanted to speak to me in his office. Now, Jack was a successful and wealthy man, but at 60, he had been married 3 times. He was a cheater and a bully. He is one of those power-mad types who commands respect but gives none in return. That many times in the past, I thought about quitting, but he always convinced me to stay, and the money was the best in this area. One thing I did know about him was that he was having an affair with his secretary, a Terry or Olivia, behind his third wife's back. Now I hear these rumors about your wife playing around on you. Look, Alex, he said bluntly. The pure nephew, I snapped back. Well, yes, he's a cad, that boy. It runs in the family, he said, laughing as I remained silent. But that's what I want to talk to you about. I don't want this to affect the business, and family comes first after that. Alex! So if you have a problem, it will be you who will have to leave the company. Is that understood? He was talking to me like an old-school teacher punishing a child. I bit my lip as his eager secretary. Olivia hovered by the door. She was no doubt collecting some information to spread to her friends on the factory floor. As I turned to leave, I wondered why a young woman like her would lower herself to the depths of having love with a dirty old man like Jack Walker. As I passed her, I heard snickering again. I put my head down and walked out. As the door closed behind me, I heard the explosive sound of laughter, which was obviously at my expense. As I made my way back to my office, I realized that being here was doing me no good at all. I had paid for my girl's education, and all I was doing now was financing my wife's infidelities. I was a pretty simple guy. I liked my gadgets, but I could live without the big house. The majority of my living costs were Holly's indulgences. Weekly hair and nail appointments, her car and phone, plus other unnecessary luxuries. At work, I was normally happy. It was my place to be creative, and I was very successful. I was the one who had designed many of the parts being produced and sold here, and I was sure I could find gainful employment elsewhere. They just thought I was too weak, and well, they were right. I wasn't the confrontational type, and I never made waves because I was content. I was good old Alex, the submissive engineer who people could walk all over. I looked at my screensaver of the family on holiday. I rolled the mouse, and the page opened to my email. I had a message waiting for me, and it was from a woman called Jennifer Holmes from the Cambridge Genealogy Committee. I was taken aback by how fast they had replied. I clicked and read the message. I was blown away. Jennifer had read my message appealing for information on my dad and had gotten in touch with a woman who claimed to be his niece, who had been on the same site many months ago researching her family tree. Her name was Rachel Murray, and she was my cousin. I mailed back my number to Jennifer and asked if Rachel could possibly contact me. I left work with my spirits slightly raised. As I walked through the door, I could smell dinner cooking. I left my bag in the hallway and walked into the kitchen to find Holly busy getting everything together. We managed to mumble a greeting, but ate in silence. During dinner, Holly kept trying to make eye contact with me, but she must have known I was still angry. This before tonight, I never went a few hours without rolling over and letting her off the hook or allowing her to get her own way. She broke the ice. "Can we talk about last night, Alex?" she asked meekly. "What's there to talk about? You made yourself perfectly clear last night. I either live with it or else, right?" She looked at me for a few seconds with what looked like regret in her face. It did not last for long as she inhaled deeply, cleared her throat, and continued, "You're a great husband and you've denied me nothing, so please don't deny me this, Alex." She was almost pleading in the way she always does to get what she wants. "If I'm so great, why cheat on me? Why make a fool of me?" I asked honestly. She became flustered and just shrugged me off. She had no answer. She was just selfish, and I was growing tired of it. I couldn't do any more to make her happy. The hours I put in to pay the bills and give her everything she wants, and I get nothing but disrespect and ridicule. I drive a 12-year-old Range Rover, so she can drive one less than 2 years old. Look, Alex, I have needs, and you just cannot fulfill them. So you either deal with it like I know you are going to, or you lose me to a younger man. You mean Henry Walker. You might as well use his name Holly. Everyone knows he's screwing you. I interjected. Okay, yes. Henry and I are lovers. He is effectively your boss, actually, and he'll one day take over the company from his uncle, she said bluntly. So he gives me what I need now in bed, and if you do not buck up and accept the arrangement, then I'll leave you, and he'll give me everything else I want and need. I said nothing as usual. I just got up from my seat and walked into my study. Is it I really wanted to punch something or someone, but instead I slumped into my office chair and screamed into my hands. The tears came, and I wished to be anywhere else. But here right now. I found a tissue and wiped my eyes as the phone began to ring. I picked it up the phone and heard a strange voice on the other end. It was Rachel. We spoke for about an hour, and when I put the phone down, everything else was gone from my mind, and I had a huge smile on my face. Rachel was delighted that I had decided to look into my father and had so much to tell me. She spoke at 100 mph, and I struggled to take in everything she said. I found out that my mom had indeed kicked my father out of the house, so she lied to me all my childhood. He sadly died in 1983 when I was just 11. He had died of alcohol poisoning, and his mother, my grandmother, always blamed my mom for his character and state of mind after he left us. Rachel told me he longed to be back in my life, but was prevented from doing so. We arranged to meet at the weekend at her home in Cambridge. I was excited, and I knew the break would do me good. As the rest of the week dragged on, the things at home were the same, and at work, I was being constantly laughed at behind my back. Henry and his pals thought it would be funny to hang a pair of knickers on my office door. I looked at Olivia and she said nothing. Inside the underwear was a post-it note that said, "Please return to your wife." I was broken. I sat at my desk and cried that day too. I wanted to blame everyone except myself. I would be glad when Saturday arrived. I told Holly I was going to see a friend in London, and she didn't really care what I was up to. I guessed she would be screwing around on me, so being away made that easier for her. The drive up to Cambridge was stressful. The M25 was a nightmare as usual, and I eventually found Rachel's house. I found Rachel's house an hour after I expected. It did not seem to bother her, as I was greeted with the best hug I had received in years. I was introduced to her husband, Greg, and their 2 young children, Grace and William. Thus, with the formalities over, we got down to talk about my father and my new family. Rachel had such a warm, selfless personality, and she and Greg talked over each other and finished each other's sentences. I guess they were both eager to share the story of our family. During my time there, we were joined by David and Lucy Price. He was my cousin also, and brother of Rachel. We got on really well, and he added what he knew about my father and the family. After lunch, we went on a little trip where I was given time to think. When we returned, David and I spoke about our jobs and our family life. He could tell things were not good, and for some reason. I confided in both my new cousins. They simply told me not to stand for it, and that they would support me if I needed anything. I was so grateful. I left Cambridge with a new look on things. I had been told so many lies and had been treated so badly throughout my life that knowing I had a whole different family who within a day had shown me more kindness and honesty than most people I had known all my life gave me hope. Basically, I needed to sort my life out and get back to being happy, not just for me, but for my girls, my friends, and my new family. Actually, when I returned home, it was gone 8 p.m., and Holly was just getting ready to go out somewhere. "Where are you going?" "Polly," I asked. "Out with my friends." "Do you mean Henry or Max?" I snapped back. She looked at me somewhat taken aback at how I knew the name of her second paramour. I gave her a knowing look. "Please, not all this again?" "Alex," she begged, seemingly indifferent to my feelings. "Please." "Holly, asking you to stop this and be my wife." "Stop being silly. Alex, I am your wife and always will be. Don't deny me my pleasures, and I'll make life easy on you. I'll be back by midnight." She completely ignored my wishes and continued to threaten me. She walked towards me with her arms open wide, so I turned my back on her. She said nothing of my blatant snub and just collected her Prada handbag and headed for the door. Again, "Polly, as your husband, I'm asking you not to do this," my voice now getting sterner. She stopped in her tracks and looked at me as though asking herself, who was this guy, and who does he think he is talking to me like that? It lasted only a second again before she burst out laughing. "What are you going to do?" "Alex, leave me. You will never have the balls to do that. You both know you will always be here for me." I was crestfallen. I dropped my head as her words reverberated through my head. Or for me, no balls deny me my pleasures. I always knew she was a spoiled brat. Her parents had seen to that. I knew I treated her like a queen, whereas I was the workhorse. I knew she was selfish, but I always believed she loved me more than anything. I knew I was a fool, and I knew I had been for way too long. That had to end, and I needed to make plans to make it so. I wasted no time in getting things rolling. In fact, I started while she was out getting involved with Henry or Max. Maybe they were doing her together. That is probably what she meant by getting her pleasures, having her cake and eating it. I provide all the safety, security, and material goods, and two young men get to take advantage of her any way they wanted to. My thoughts were making me angry, and I was beginning to lose focus. I needed to find a way to destroy the last vestiges of affection I had left for her, and I think I found a way. I found the box I was looking for and the specific picture within that box. It was the only one I had of my mom and sisters. I did not think it would work, but I cut a picture I had of Holly's face and pasted it next to them. I had no love left for them, and adding Holly's smirking face to the picture might just do the trick. I placed it on the desk next to the monitor in my study. At around 12:45 a.m., I was finishing up. I pretty much worked out what I was going to do in the short term. I had an idea of when I would leave, but it could be a few weeks yet. I had the time because it was not like Holly was expecting me to go. It might not work, and I would definitely require help to pull it off, but I had convinced myself by this time that I would go through with it. I heard someone stumbling through the door, and as I got up to look out of the window, I saw Henry Walker's car pull away. I heard her climb the stairs, so I quickly wiped my history. In the future, I would have to use incognito mode. I waited until she went into her bedroom before going down the stairs to make myself a coffee. I sat on the sofa and pondered my future away from here, and to be honest, without my daughters being here, I knew it wouldn't be too bad. I thought I would try and move closer to them. Monday morning, and I walked into work clear that I would not be lifting a finger anymore. Jack Walker could sack me for all I care. I walked to my office oblivious to any of the snickering or comments being made about me. You see, I will bring these people down, and I knew then that my anger would somehow get me through all this. I managed to arrange a meeting with the bank for 1 p.m. and took the time before to work out my finances in preparation. He said it was going to be a long shot, but if it worked and the right people helped me, then I would come out of this pretty unscathed. The meeting went as planned, and I was able to close out my savings account and remove my name from our joint account. I had an ISA with a few grand in it, so I closed that out for cash and stuffed it in my wallet. On the way back to the office, I stopped at a PCW World and purchased 2 digital voice recorders, a 500 GB USB 3.02 drive, and a new PC hard drive. Once back in the office, I sat down and started to see if I could open up the company's private customer files. I had seen them briefly before in Jack's office, so I knew they existed, but I needed his password. It took me no more than an hour to crack it. Ironically, his wife's name was the username, and the password was both his name and his 6-digit birthday, Jack 240,656. I had what I needed. I attached the drive to my computer and downloaded all the files to it. 10 minutes later, I did the same with all my new plans and drawings for the energy-efficient hydraulic pump system I had been working on, which would keep this company ahead of the game. We built pumps for air conditioning units, heavy machinery, and even for the dairy sector. I wiped my entire PC history, including all the plans and all my work. I then shut it down and removed the hard drive and replaced it with the new one. I put everything into my bag and then reinstalled Windows. I spent the rest of the day looking up our competitors on my phone. I checked into Monster to look for engineering jobs in the South London, Surrey area, and then left for the day. At night, after another silent dinner, I headed for my study. I found that one of our main competitors, who had struggled during the financial downturn, was looking for a mechanical engineer who could assist in basic design and shop floor management. It wasn't entirely what I wanted, but darn near close. They were offering a salary 20 cars lower than my current salary, so I fired off an email and included my CV. I decided to sleep in our marital bed that night just to keep up appearances with Holly. However, I made sure I was asleep when she walked in. I felt her rub up against me, and I felt sick, and as bad as that was, it actually pleased me to react in such a way. I was becoming repulsed by her, and this would help me in the long run. But the following day, I received a call from a very surprised-sounding Robert Williams from Sutton Hydraulics. We spoke briefly, and he couldn't believe I would consider quitting Walker Engineering for his smaller company. He nearly offered me the job on the spot, but I insisted on an interview the next day. He agreed. Other vital cog had been fitted, and the wheels were beginning to turn pretty fast. I had plenty of time on my hands, so I started to research flats in the area. I didn't need a house, and although the options were not particularly great, I did manage to find one really nice flat to rent. It was $1,200 per month, with 2 bedrooms, and it would be perfect for me. That was situated 15 minutes from the girls and 5 minutes from work. This I arranged for a viewing the next day after the interview with Robert Williams was finished. But I spoke to Jack and told him I had to go and see my daughters at Kingston the next day to sign some papers. He just brushed me off and said go. That night, I called my best friend Toby Brown. We had known each other since 6th form. We both got in at Kingston, but he studied finance and mathematics. He was now a big-time banking analyst in the city and lived with his wife and children in a nice house in Twickenham. Best of all, he and his wife loathed Holly, which meant we rarely socialized with each other as couples. Holly was jealous of Sarah because she was an ambitious web developer and married to a rich banker. I guess even with everything I gave her, I still did not measure up. I arranged to meet Toby the next evening, after my interview and flat viewing. He knew I had something playing on my mind, but I told him I would tell all when we met. But on the drive up, I thought about many things. Today would be important not only for my plan in the short term, but also for my future. I had no idea at this point how the girls would react. Prior to recent revelations, I was planning to retire at 55. I had thought about investing in a retirement villa in Italy or somewhere. My mortgage would be paid off when I hit 50, and the extra 5 years of work would give us a nice little fund without having to rely on the pension pot. My new job was located 20 minutes from the girls' flat. It was a quick meeting, and the flat was perfect, so I had plenty of time before I had to meet Toby. So I grabbed some lunch for me and the girls and made my way to their flat. They lived together, and I paid half the rent. As I approached the building, I didn't know what I was going to say to them. I didn't know how often they spoke to their mom, but I knew I didn't want to keep anything from them. When they saw me, they ran down and grabbed me as I was just getting through the door. My smile could have been seen from space. I missed them both so much. "Daddy, Daddy?" They yelled, laughing like they were still toddlers. They took me inside, and I set out the lunch I had picked up on the way. We sat and ate it as they updated me on their lives and their schoolwork. I was so proud of my two girls. Sophie was already 2 years into a pharmacology degree, and Ava was studying nursing. Two careers made for loving and caring people. I could see Rachel in them, and I spoke at length about our new family and promised them we would all meet soon. When we finished lunch, I took a sip of my coffee and paused for thought. They knew something was going on. "What is it?" I bowed to you. "A punit," Sigrid said. "Spit it out," Sophie said. "Well, you know your mom has been cheating on me, right?" I said. They both looked at each other before returning their gaze towards me and nodding in unison. "Well, I've had enough, and I've decided I'm going to leave her," I blurted out to universal smiles. "Good," Ava said. "It's about time." "Dad," Sophie added. "Are you not angry or anything, girls?" I asked timidly. Dad. "For as long as I can remember, she's been a jerk to you," Sophie growled. I thought about admonishing her for disrespecting her mother, but thought better of it. In fact, I thought, "Well done, Sophie." I was also again ashamed because they had obviously seen it growing up. I hoped they wouldn't follow in their mother's footsteps where men are concerned. I hope I hadn't damaged them in some way because I was too weak and pathetic. I also hoped I had their respect. "That's what are you going to do?" they've asked. I told them I had a new job and that I would be moving closer to them. They were delighted but also surprised that I had actually decided to get away from their cheating mom and had plans in place when I did. I got 2 big and loving hugs for it. I told them I would be doing everything possible to protect my financial future without going into too much detail. As I got up to leave, they told me that they would support me no matter what, and although they loved their mother, she was second to me and always had been. I left their flat full of happiness, and now I was ready for the next stage of my plan. This was the most important part. Toby and Sarah met a few years after he left university. They are 2 of the nicest people I know, and I would be relying on that benevolence tonight. I was warmly welcomed as usual, but what I would be asking of them played on my mind, and they both knew I wasn't myself. They wanted to know straight away what was going on, so I told them. No point in beating around the bush. I told them everything that had been going on and the first part of my plans. They were more surprised that I was fighting back than by Holly's infidelity. But to them, that was pretty much par for the course in their eyes. "So why leave her now?" Sarah asked, handing me another cup of tea. I refused anything stronger as I needed to drive home tonight. I always thought she had cheated on me but couldn't prove it. Now she has admitted to it. Everything just came to a head. I've also discovered something that has triggered something within me to say, enough is enough. I told them all about the meeting with my cousins and the truth about my dad being kicked out of the house by my mom and how my sisters took her side. My dad was just like me, or shall I say I was like him, but this time my girls are on my side. So it was that discovery that triggered you into finally standing up for yourself? Toby asked, concern etched on his face. Oh, I was taken to my father's grave. I was hesitant at first, but I managed to lay some flowers and say a few words. It was then I looked at the etching on the stone that left me shocked. It was then I knew I had to leave, I explained. What was it? Touch that you create 18 stamp. It had an image of a rose, and below that it said, in loving memory. It had the date of his birth, and below that it said the age he was when he died. There was a period of silence before I spoke again. He died at the age of 44, the age I am now. Both Toby and Sarah recoiled slightly at this news, and I knew then they understood. There have been times when I could have reached for the dream. I have reached for the drink like he did, or did myself in like my grandmother believed he did. I had a choice, be like him or fight back. I said clearly, I decided I wasn't going to kill myself trying to be the perfect husband anymore and being abused and ridiculed in the process. I felt weaker at that point than I had in weeks. Admitting to my friends how low I had been was harder than I imagined. Toby shook me out of my mood. What do you need from us? Alex, please say no if it's too much, but I have planned to protect myself and screw the jerk over. Sarah interjected. I smiled and nodded. I guess Sarah did have a tough side to her character. When I thought she was having an affair in 2008, I opened a separate savings account and put all my bonuses and any spare cash into it. It was also with a stroke of luck that the only way we could get a mortgage for the amount we needed was if I applied in my name only. Holly had no real work history, so it was just easier for me to apply alone. I knew if anyone was capable of following my train of thought, it would be Toby. My savings with interest is now worth £6,800. I have 120 kiars left on my mortgage, but a house down the street from me sold for over $500,000. Toby, I need you with your contacts to get me a short-term loan for the other $60K. I want to pay off my mortgage before I divorce her when I divorce her. Why bother? It would mean she could go for half of it. Sarah said, well, apart from the 60-odd thousand in savings that I'll keep, she can fight for half of everything anyway. But this is where you come in, I said, pausing for a second. I want you to register a new company. What do you mean, register a new company? Toby interjected. I want to transfer the ownership of my house to your new company. That means she cannot get her hands in it. I've researched it, and if I pay off the mortgage, all I need to do is contact the land re-registry and transfer the deeds into your company. Toby and Sarah looked at each other for a minute. Thinks, will that work? Alex? I mean, if you divorce her, she will get a lawyer and fight for everything. She has no money for that, and I'm sure her parents will be reluctant to stump up such a huge bill if they know their daughter is a cheating cheater. Plus, I hope to use her opinion of me to my advantage, I said. Tongue. This Toby asked. She thinks I am a coward that will never leave her, so I won't ask for a divorce until the house is sold. As the property becomes cash, and by the time she realizes I'm divorcing her, we can have that money moved around into numerous different accounts. Toby just smiled at me and said, Alex, so you will help me? He asked. Oh yes, I'll get on to it straight away. But you know a good solicitor will attempt to trace the money done at you, he said. Yes, but it will take a long time and she won't be able to afford a big legal bill. Legal bill. After another hour of conversation, I left for home. All the pieces were coming together. I decided on the drive home that I wasn't even going to file for divorce. I was certain I would not meet anybody else, let alone get married again, and that way it will buy me more time. I guessed Holly wouldn't be bothered by me being missing until at least a month. I laughed to myself with that thought. By next week, I would be gone. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I returned home. I looked in on Holly, and she was fast asleep. No guilty conscience keeping her awake. I decided to head into the spare room. The concierge de morning, I was up and out again before Holly awoke. I spent the morning writing my resignation letter, and around lunchtime, Toby called. I have good news, bad news, and then good news again, mate. Okay, go in that order, I said, laughing. Well, the good news is I have registered a company. It only takes an hour to do at company's house, he said. The bad news is that a loan for the amount you need would need some major collateral to back it. Something like a house, and that isn't going to want to work for you. I was disappointed, and I scratched my head trying to think of something when Toby continued. Look, Alex, you trust me, and I trust you. I spoke to Sarah about this, and we were thinking the same thing. I'll transfer $60K into your account now, so you can get on with this. Just pay me back when you find the money? Okay. I was dumbfounded. If he could see my face right now, he would know how grateful I was. That's too much. Toby, you've done enough already. Just take the money and go do what you need to do, he said. You have no idea how much this helps me, mate. I owe you big time. Just get it done. But get away from that disrespectful money-grabbing cheat and be happy. That's all we care about. I gave him my details and ended the call. My next call was to the bank for a meeting the next day. After work, or lack thereof, I drove to the local Land Rover dealership. I knew the guy because it is where I purchased Holly's Range Rover Sport about 10 months ago. I was still paying for it, in fact. I had an idea of how to get some more money. Hello, Bob, Mr. Price. Finally decided on a new car for you. Don Reeves greeted me at the entrance. He was the owner of the dealership. No, John. I wanted to discuss selling my wife's car and paying off what I owe, I said, sounding more pleased than I should have been. Oh, right. I hope everything is okay, he asked. Everything is good. You met her and know how demanding she is. Now she wants a Mercedes 4x4. Well, I don't want to say anything untoward, but she did seem pushy, he admitted. We came to an agreement that he would take the Range Rover back, and we would cancel our payment plan. I promised to return to upgrade my car, and he knew he could make up the cost of Holly's car by selling it as practically brand new. I apologized for any inconvenience, but the thought of selling me an expensive new Range Rover more than made it up to him. Jason, on the way out, I took a 2016 brochure, not for me, but for Holly. When I got home, Holly was sitting in the lounge nursing a coffee and looking a bit pale. I took off my jacket and threw my bag down onto the floor. For everything okay, love? I asked through gritted teeth. Yeah, just feeling a bit tired, darling, she said, taking a sip from her mug. She was holding out her arms, as though wanting me to hug her and make her feel better. I ignored her and walked back to my bag and removed the brochure. Know what will make you feel better, I said. I walked over to her and sat on the coffee table across from her. She looked at the empty seat next to her and back to me with a confused look. What you got there? She asked, eyeing the brochure. Well, your car is nearly a year old, and I went by the dealership to Debray and saw their new model. It's awesome, Holly, I said as her eyes lit up. That's why I want my wife to have the best of everything, so I'm going to trade your car in and buy you this, I said, pointing to a new 2017 model inside the brochure. Oh, wow. I love it, she said, oblivious to my plan. You always know how to make me feel better, don't you? Alex, the only problem is that they have a buyer for your car already, so I need to get it down there by Friday afternoon. I'll finish work early and take it to the dealership, and then for the weekend, you can just use mine to go visit your lovers. The final comment made her recoil, and a look of shock and confusion filled her face. What's wrong? I asked. Nothing. Alice, I just thought you were still angry about our arrangement, she asked. Not our arrangement? Tally, accurate your arrangement? I had no say in it, remember. But I guess I have no choice, right? I said, hoping to get a response. She just nodded as though she had finally put me in my place and I had conceded defeat. I love you, Alex. I turned to look at her, and a genuine look of concern greeted me. I said nothing in reply and just walked off into the kitchen. My phone began to ring, and I walked out to the back garden to take it. Abby confirmed the money had been transferred. I was good to go. The next day, I wasted no time as I entered the bank and was shown into the mortgage specialist's office. She looked to be around my age and yet wore no wedding ring. I ponsers of Feimilins to a Prolich. I thought maybe there would be life after Holly after all, but pushed that idea to the back of my mind. An hour later, the mortgage was paid off. That show all my remaining accounts were closed. I walked a few doors down and opened a new account with another bank. I was a happy man knowing that I wouldn't have to pay anything again unless Holly got a solicitor and took me to court. My smile faded. I made my way back to the office, ignoring Olivia as she rose to her feet to speak. I sat down with a coffee and thought about the next stage of my plan. I contacted the land registry and filled out the appropriate online application. I had all the details of Toby and Sarah's new company, and within 10 minutes of applying, I was sent a confirmation email telling me it would take 3 to 5 days to complete. Once this was done, I would simply hand over the deeds to Toby, and he could register the property to his company. I decided to shop around online looking for furniture and details of canceling the utilities at the house. I needed to wait until the time was right, but I did set up new accounts for my flat in Sutton. Finally, I had one more thing left to do, something I had been putting off. I knocked on Jack's door. Olivia was in there with him, of course. Fridays were usually the day the dirty old jerk had his way with her, and I think I disturbed their amorous activities. She left us alone. "How can I help, Alex?" he said cheerfully as he ogled Olivia leaving the room. I placed my resignation down on his desk. He looked up at me with that stupid smirk on his face. "What's this?" he asked. "My resignation," I replied. "I think it's best if I leave straight away. I'm sure with the situation regarding our families. I doubt you want me here too long." He looked dumbstruck. "I'd be grateful if you can get my P45 ready by Monday, and please don't mention this to anyone." "That the wife doesn't know," I said brashly. "But you can't do this. He needs you," he said pathetically. "Out as much as you need your nephew, apparently. I'll be in on Monday to collect the last of my things." I pretended to drop a pen from my pocket, and when I bent down, I removed the digital recorder from my saw. I had managed to construct a pin to it, and as I stood back up, I hit record and pushed it up under the seat and into the wooden frame. At Intparazzo, Extinction. I have things to do. "Okay, Alex, but don't come crawling back when you're skint. Your money is the only thing keeping that cheating wife of yours with you. Do you realize that?" "Of course I know that. I wish my wife was as loyal as your wife is," I said, smiling. I knew that one hit him where it hurt. I turned and left his office. An hour later, I drove home and picked up Holly's car and logbook. I drove to the dealership and dropped off her car. Thankfully, John Reeves offered to drive me home. I gladly accepted. When I got home that night, Holly was sitting at the kitchen table with big red bags under her eyes. I knew she had been crying. "What's going on, Halls?" I asked with feigned sincerity. "We need to talk." Alex, she said, gesturing me to sit down. For a moment, I thought I'd been rumbled. I had a feeling of dread that washed over me. What's going on? Jimin up the Kate asked again. I went to the doctor today, and I have been diagnosed with... She hesitated. So many things were going through my mind. If it was serious, what kind of man would I be to leave? I begged to leave a seriously ill woman as I was planning to do. I have... She stuttered. Just tell me. Holly, what is it? I implored her to spit it out. I have gonorrhea, she finally said, bursting into tears. I laughed. Crap, did I laugh? And she just glared at me. It's not funny. I feel so ashamed. I turned to her and she looked a mess. This had to be humiliating. Well, I know I don't have it because I haven't touched you in over a month, and when for as long as I have known about your affairs. I've used protection, I said, trying not to gloat too much. Oh, so as long as everything's all right with you, that is okay. She was silent. Well, just take the drugs and soon enough you will be back on your back. Oops, I mean feet. If looks could kill, I would be dead already. Just find out which one gave it to you and tell them to get to the doctors before he spreads it further, I said before getting up and leaving her crying at the table. I slept well that night for the first time in months. Of course, I slept in the spare room. Not worth taking any risks with the riddled wife, was it? Saturday morning, and I was feeling great. The good night's sleep definitely helped me, and I went into our bedroom and woke Holly in bed to tell her I was going to give her some space to rest and recover. I'm going to see the girls. I'll give them your best. Just rest up, okay? I said, as lovingly as I could possibly pretend to be. She smiled at me and asked for a cuddle. I gave in, but did it half-heartedly. When she released her grip, she must have felt something was off with me. She looked at me sadly and spoke. You think I'm disgusting, don't you? I said nothing, and suddenly the tears began to flow down her cheeks. I just want you to get better, that's all. Oh, Alex, I do love you so much. I think I've messed up big time. I told Allison about my problem, and she sounded horrified. At first, I felt bad for her, but it disappeared even quicker than I thought it would. That shocked me a little. I realized then I had lost all love for the woman I have been married to for 21 years. Could it really disappear that quickly? Obviously, it could because I was done, and her situation did nothing to slow me down. I left the room after saying nothing. I got into my car and drove away happily. At church that morning, I was sat down with the girls, and I told them everything that had been going on. They were amazed, and I could see they had developed a newfound respect for me. I told them about Holly's little trip to the doctors, which they found hilarious. I shouldn't have laughed, but I couldn't help it, and it told me that maybe the girls really did hate her as much as I did. What will she do? Dad? Diva asked. She'll have to move in with Granny and Gramps, or convince one of her lovers to take her in. I have a feeling those two degenerates were only interested in screwing a married woman and boasting about it. I doubt they'll want a relationship with her. What do you think? I asked. They both just looked at me and shook their heads. At night, I stayed with Toby and Sarah, who threw a dinner party with many of their friends and colleagues in attendance. There were a few single women my age invited, and I found myself feeling confident enough to engage them in conversation. The alcohol helped me to approach one woman called Irmi, who caught my eye. She was a divorcee friend of Sarah's, and as the drinks flowed, she even managed to convince me to dance. It was a fun night all round, and it was something I really needed. A night not thinking about Holly and the end of my marriage or my plans to leave her felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. When I arrived home late Sunday morning, I found Holly up doing housework. I walked into the lounge, and when she saw me, she launched herself at me and hugged me. I just patted her on the back. "Where did you stay last night?" "Alex, I thought you were coming home," she asked. Abby and Sarah threw a dinner party, and I drank way too much, so I slept on their couch. I replied nonchalantly. "That doesn't sound like you." "Was it fun?" she asked, giving me a cautious look. I had to be careful not to give anything away, so I pulled out my phone and showed her some pictures. Her face soon went red. "Who is that woman?" she asked angrily. "Oh, that's Amy. She's a friend of Sarah's. She actually got me up dancing. It was good fun." I looked up from my phone to see Holly looking angrily at me. The irony of being angry at me was lost on her. She was angry at me for an innocent dance when every week she was seeing some guy. "Well, next time I want to come with you." "I haven't seen the guys in a long time," she said, now returning to a normal color. I walked into the kitchen and put the kettle on. Polly followed me. "Have you been okay without your car?" I was trying to fill the silent small talk. "You've been fine." "When will my new car arrive?" she asked. "They said Wednesday for delivery." I turned to see her looking somewhat perturbed, "But if you want to pick it up, you can go on Monday afternoon and get it." I have stuff to do Monday. Hair and shopping with my sister," she replied, obviously not too bothered by the missing car. "Well, I can drop you off in town to meet your sister, and then you can ask her to drive you to the dealership. Then you get to drive back your new Range Rover," I said with an excited grin. She smiled and walked towards me with her arms open. I turned back to the kettle, pretending I didn't see her. For the rest of the day, Holly was all around me, and I actually felt uncomfortable. She kept trying to kiss me or hug me, and I kept making excuses to leave. I think she got the message because as I went to bed, I could see that she had been crying again. "Good night, Holly. Will you be sleeping with me tonight?" "Alex, I want to cuddle up to you. You get the all clear from the doctor." "Holly, sorry, but you made your bed," I said harshly. "Go when I get better. I am sure I can find a man who will want to be in bed with me. I have plenty of lost time to make up for." She snapped back bitterly. I laughed to myself. It took longer than I expected, but here it was, and the jerk was back. All those regrets from Friday night had disappeared. Like for the last 21 years, I would have fallen for her nonsense. But this time, I ignored her tears and headed for the spare room. The last night in my house, and it will be in the spare room. I was also glad that she said those things. That removed any sign of any doubt I might have had. I looked at my mocked-up picture of her and my sisters, and all I could feel was hatred for her. She was only sweet when she wanted something, and a jerk when she couldn't get it. I woke early Monday morning. Holly was awake early too for her 8:30 hair appointment, so I drove her into town as planned. Don't forget to take a cab to the dealership around 2 p.m. They are expecting you, I said, ignoring her moves for a kiss. I drove off knowing that could be the last time I ever see her. And how feared it wouldn't be, but it would for as long as I could make it so. On the way, I called the mobile phone company and terminated both our contracts. I pulled over into a lay-by to pay the penalty on my card. They informed me that the phones would remain in service until 5 p.m. perfect. Next, I headed for the office to pick up my P45. I entered the factory, and there was a solemn atmosphere. His news of my departure must have made the rounds, and for a brief moment, I saw a look of fear on their faces. I did not know why. As I walked down the corridor towards my office, I passed the coffee machine where the usual suspects were gathered. I wasn't exactly sure if Max and Henry were aware that they were both involved with my wife or not, but here they were both grinning at me and sharing jokes with the other fools. Morning, guys. Good morning. Alex, how's the wife? They said to the usual laughter. How this joke was still funny was beyond me. Oh, not so good. I'm afraid. One of you idiots gave her the clap. I walked away to complete silence, and when I turned back their jaws had dropped, and Max then yelled something at Henry. I heard a big commotion before heading up the stairs. Olivia saw me approaching and gave me a half smile before putting her head down. Maybe now I was getting some respect. Jack was soon at the door before I could knock. I have what you want, so take it and get out. Maybe that respect thing was in my imagination. I entered his office and sat down. I reached under the chair and surreptitiously put the recorder into my pocket. I knew he would have given Olivia his weekly Friday attention, and now I had it all on the recorder. So do you have another job lined up, Alex? He snapped. I ignored him at first, but thought I will give him what he wants. No, nothing. A big smile grew on his face, and he probably thought I would come crawling back to him soon enough. So, do I get my final month's pay and end-of-year bonus now? Jack? I asked. He burst out laughing as Olivia walked in with my P45. What's so funny? She asked. Alex here just asked for his bonus and pay. That's hilarious, Olivia said, joining him laughing at me. I thought, why not? So I joined in too. This made them stop and look at me like I had gone mad. Why are you laughing, Alex? Olivia said. I don't know. Olivia, why do you let this old fucker screw you every week? I said as my laughter grew louder. They froze as her eyes grew wide, and Jack began to turn red with anger. I bet Mommy and Daddy are proud of their slutty little daughter. She dropped my paperwork on the floor and ran out of the room in tears. Like said, "Get the fudge out of my office and out of my company before I get the boys to drag you out by your ears." I laughed as I walked out and into my office to collect the last of my things. I was still laughing to myself as I pulled up to my house. I got out and dropped the back seats. I opened the boot and went inside the house. I walked around the house thinking about what I wanted to take with me. I had a few Romero Brito artworks, and so took them down and wrapped them in some plastic I had found in the garage. I packed them into my car and continued around the house collecting things. Finally, I went upstairs and emptied my wardrobe. I took all my paperwork from the safe, including the girls' birth certificates and my wedding certificate. I found a loft ladder and went up and found all my old stuff. My degree and the family photos were all up there. I went into the master and took all the jewelry I had brought Holly over the years. It must have been over $20,000 worth, and then I took all the handbags, shoes, and expensive coats I had brought too. In fact, the whole darn wardrobe was purchased by me, so I took the lot. Activity is always the responsible one, so I had receipts for nearly everything for insurance purposes. It would serve me well when I come to sell it all. When I was done packing, I realized I would need a TV, so I took that too, along with my movie collection and the Blu-ray player, of course. By now, my car was way too full. I thought I could lose all of Holly's clothes and a few more items I really didn't need, including some of my old clothes. Lisa knew me would require a new wardrobe, and the girls would jump at the chance to help me out with that. I found all the best pictures of me and the girls and packed them into the car. I was in no real rush because Holly wasn't going to be back until gone 2 p.m. I made a cup of tea and took 5 minutes. Well, you have to have a cup of tea. It's in the Magna Carta, I think. I picked up my phone and called the TV company and canceled the satellite, phone, and internet. I called British Gas and Southern Water to cancel the utilities. It would take a few days, but I did not care. I returned to the bedroom and sat on the bed when I noticed something that gave me an idea, one that scared even me. It was sat at the top of the wardrobe in a dusty old box. It was Holly's wedding dress. She loved it probably more than me. I took it down and then found amongst the box of photographs on the bed our wedding album. I grabbed the duvet cover and snatched everything up and headed towards the garden. When I was outside, I walked to the middle of the garden and dumped everything into a pile. I added all of Holly's clothes and her belongings that I knew I couldn't sell. I made sure I left her underwear alone because, well, I did not want to catch anything. I went to my car and closed all the doors up. I was ready to go and looking at my watch. It was only 1:45 p.m., so I called up Robert Williams and told him I could drop off my P45 later that night with the night shift. That way, I could start work afresh tomorrow morning. He sounded delighted, and I told him I was already working on plans to win him new customers and improve the hydraulic pumps that would make him super competitive in the market. I think he could feel my enthusiasm, and I hoped as I ended the call that I had made his day. It was now 2 p.m., and I sat waiting for the call and some paint thinners in the garage and walked out into the garden and poured it all over the wedding dress. I was about to light the fire when my phone rang. "Hello," I said calmly. "What is going on? Alex?" Holly screamed down the phone. "Whatever do you mean?" "Holly," I asked sarcastically. "Don't play dumb." "Alex," she continued. "Calm down." "Holly, what's going on?" There was silence, and I could hear her breathing heavily. I could also hear what sounded like her sister in the background. "They told me you have not brought me a new car, but sold mine instead." "Oh yes, did I forget to tell you that?" "What are you talking about?" "Alex, what's going on?" She started to sound panicked. "Well, from now on, if you want a car, you can pay for it yourself," I said, trying to remain as calm as I could. My heart was racing. "What?" she yelled. I decided even a programs. "I don't understand." "Alex," she said meekly and sounding very confused. "You heard me just fine. Holly, you want it, you can buy it. Now, if you will excuse me, I need to tidy up the kitchen. Do Graham stay?" "What? Is this some kind of sick joke?" I said nothing. "We will talk about this when I get home." "Alex, I'm not happy about being pranked," she screamed. Again, I remained silent. I could hear her out of breath, as though she was walking at pace to her sister's car. The slamming door confirmed it. I knew she was on her way. In her state, she could convince her sister to be here in 5 minutes. Alex. "Yes," I replied almost too calmly. "Did you say you were in our kitchen?" She asked, suddenly realizing what I had said. "Yes, why are you not at work?" she asked. I walked outside, struck a match, and lit the pyre. Our past went up in flames as I walked away. I took our marriage certificate from my pocket and tore it into pieces and left it on the kitchen table, along with a single photograph of us all on holiday in Disneyland. It was a great time with many happy memories. I wonder if she thought so too. I got into my car and drove away. As I got to the end of the street, I could see in my rearview mirror a Holly and Jennifer pulling up to the house. Neither of them looked up, they just ran into the house. I switched my phone off, smiled, and pulled away. The A3 was virtually empty as I drove towards my new home. For some reason, I could not escape the feeling of dread that clung to me. I knew that this would not be the last time I would see Holly, and as soon as my plan advanced, she would do everything to track me down and make me pay. It was just the type of person she was. I also knew she would bring the girls into it, and I did not want them to be burdened with our problems, especially as they had to focus on their studies. City to make done, I was in Sutton by 4 p.m. and decided I had time to visit a local phone shop and set up a new mobile phone contract. I also managed to catch the administration team at work to process my P45, and I met Freya, my new secretary. She was pretty young, but held herself very professionally, a complete contrast to Olivia. I made my way back to my new flat, which was completely empty. I had running water and electricity, so I found the kettle I took from home and made a cup of tea. I moved my stuff in and ordered a pizza. I picked up my old phone and switched it on. The service had been terminated. I smiled to myself, knowing that Holly was now without a phone too, and that should give the girls some breathing space before I get to speak to them. I found my sleeping bag and arranged it out in the lounge, and waited for dinner. I had some furniture arriving at the weekend, but for now, I was at least glad to be away from Holly. I switched on my laptop and located the voice recordings I made in Jack Walker's office. I uploaded the content and played it back to hear the incriminating evidence of his infidelity with Olivia. I grabbed 2 USB sticks and made a couple of copies. I wrote the addresses of Margaret Walker, wife of Jack, and Peter Lewis, boyfriend of Olivia, and then placed a stick into each one. I would post them tomorrow before work. Finally, I decided to call my daughter Sophie to let her know the latest and not to let on to their mother where I was. To my surprise, she admitted that she hadn't even spoken to her mother yet. But of course, I guess she had no phone to be able to do that. In the week that followed, I managed to get my flat furnished and wasted no time at work in contacting customers of Walker Engineering and convincing them to switch to Sutton. They saw what we were offering and jumped ship very quickly. A couple decided to stay with Jack, but the majority hated the guy, but tolerated him because of the superior products we offered. I knew it wouldn't take long for Jack to find out why his business was losing customers, but I really did not care. I also knew that with all the utilities now cut off at my old home, Holly would realize I was not coming back. There is no way she could afford the bills, so I knew it was safe for Toby to start the sales process. Sarah delighted in being the one to get the ball rolling, and by the end of the week the signs were up. It was at this time I was contacted by Ava. Apparently, Holly had moved into her parents' house, and they were not happy that their little princess was a cheat. Holly was after my blood, of course, and livid by what I had done to her. Strangely, I found that hugely satisfying, but knew this was not the end to it. By the weekend, I was invited to another dinner party at Toby and Sarah's house. I was told Amy was going to be there and that she had been asking about me to Sarah. In Ollie's teenages, I discovered she had divorced a few years ago and has been single since her husband left her a year before the divorce. Apparently, she did well out of the divorce, getting the house and full custody of the kids as well as financial support. Sadly, she's been skeptical of men ever since. Sarah told her all about my situation, and from then, she wanted to meet me. That was why they planned the earlier dinner party. She was 2 years younger than me and had 2 older teenage children. I felt like I was being set up, but I decided it wouldn't hurt. The dinner was a complete success, and I found myself completely relaxed for the first time since I planned to escape. Thus, Amy knew what I was going through and did not push me or make it obvious that she liked me. We got drunk, danced together, and at the end of the night, we exchanged numbers. She told me to call if I needed somebody to talk to, and I thanked her. I slept in the spare room of Toby's house, but these hangovers were getting harder to fight, and coffee was doing nothing to help. Sunday morning brought good news. After only a week on the market, I had received 2 serious offers. I accepted one for $550K straight away. I knew it could be some time before it completed, but I made arrangements for the money once it was finalized. I would set up ISAs as in the girls' names and then ask Toby to spread the rest amongst numerous investment funds. I would also pay him back and take a chunk in cash to keep in my home safe. I still felt the need to protect myself. But as another week passed, I was delighted to find out from Toby that the sale could be very quick. I contacted a removal company and instructed them to empty my old house. The girls called their mother and asked her if she wanted anything, and she was now even angrier and threatening. I promised the girls that it would soon all be over. On Tuesday morning, I was talking to one of our new clients who'd been in a meeting with Jack Walker over a possible renewal of a supply contract. He had told Jack that he would be moving to Sutton Engineering, and Jack was not surprised. He found out that Walker Engineering had to cut 50 of its staff due to loss of work. He also informed me that Mrs. Walker was divorcing Jack for adultery. I had absolutely no sympathy as I was totaling up the commission checks in my head whilst talking. I had no idea what happened to Olivia and her boyfriend, but I knew he had got my gift if Mrs. Walker had received hers, and even if he hadn't, I am sure it was well known why Mrs. Walker was divorcing her husband. I wonder what her friends and family would think of her cheating with an old man. This to reward me for all the new work I was given a brand new Land Rover Discovery HSE. Action, I was thinking of treating myself anyway, but Robert and the bosses were so pleased with me, and the way the company was headed that I was given the car and a fair few thousand in commission. Well, it was actually more than $30K. I was looking out of the window of my office, admiring my brand new car when a familiar-looking Ford Focus pulled into the car park. I froze as I realized who it belonged to. It was Diane's car, Holly's mom. I sat down at my chair and waited for the inevitable call. The jerk finally found me. My office phone began to ring, and I picked up. Mr. Price, there is a woman here in reception claiming to be your wife. Freya, my secretary said. Tell her I'm in a meeting, and I'll be down in an hour. 3 hours later, and I peered out the window and she was still sat there. I exhaled loudly and decided to leave for the night. If she saw me, then I would have to deal with it. If not, I would just drive on past. It was not like she knew what card to look out for. I left through a side door and made my way to my car. I was just getting into my car when I heard a screech of tires, and before I knew it she was pulling up behind the car and blocking me in. She leapt out of the car and stormed up to me with a face like thunder. She looked like heck, and her clothes were obviously her sister's old ones, and it looked like her hair hadn't been brushed in weeks. "You screwing jerk," she screamed as she threw a slap in my direction and missed. "I hate you?" "Yeah, Holly. Uptoncy. Now say what you have to say, then fudge off out of my life," I said, trying to remain calm. She just looked at me with tears rolling down her cheeks. "You've ruined my life, you jerk," she said, whimpering pathetically. I said nothing. I just continued listening. "You destroyed all my stuff, my wedding dress and my clothes." So far, it was all about her, and why wasn't I surprised? "Then you go and cancel everything, forcing me to move in with Mom and Dad," she continued. She just looked up at me and waited for me to speak. "Is that all, Holly?" I asked. "You've nothing to say for yourself," she screamed. I thought for a second before inviting her into my car. She was taken aback, but I did not want to be a public spectacle any longer. As we sat down, I could see just how bad she looked. It looked like she had aged, and I thought all this plus the steed had an effect on her appearance. "Please come home. Alex, can we put all this behind us? I forgive you." What did she just say? For my ears deceiving me. "You forgive me?" I asked, hoping I misheard. "Yes, Towel. I will forgive you for destroying my belongings and my life." "Are you delusional, Holly?" I asked. She just looked at me like I was the crazy one. "You openly cheat on me and disrespect me when I give you everything, and you have the audacity to say you forgive me." But I thought, "No, Holly, you only think about yourself. I will never be with you again, so go away and be with one of your lovers," I said coldly. She shifted uncomfortably in the chair, and I knew. "I guess as soon as you were suddenly single, they had no use for you," I asked. "They blamed me for giving them the steed and said I was just a bit of fun. They said they would never want me as a girlfriend because I am a cheating jerk." And for a second, even I thought that was harsh, but she had made her bed. Well, that was obvious. "Tali, so go and find someone else. My friends treat me differently now we are separated, and their husbands have started to question their fidelity, meaning I have been kicked to the curb. I could be a bad influence if you can believe that." The word separated stuck in my mind. I knew it meant I was still connected to her, and they made me sad. My parents are disgusted, and people in the town have heard about my steed, no doubt thanks to my so-called friends and lovers. And now some of the factory staff have lost their jobs, and I'm to blame for that too. The truth is, she was in part responsible for all the bad things that had befallen her. But I did have sympathy for her. She messed up and was paying the price, but how big was that price? She had a great life, and she ruined it through greed and disrespect. However, I knew I had to move on. I have nothing left. Alex, I need you, and I want you back in my life. I have no money and no job. When will I get my share of the house? There it was. At no point have you told me you love me. You just need me. Holly, but I do not need you. As for the house, I defaulted on the mortgage and lost it. I lied. Her eyes widened and her jaw dropped. She was shocked by what I had said, but at least I knew what this visit was all about. I want to divorce. No, please. Alex, of course I love you. We're cool and for 20 years together. And I made a little mistake, and you burned me down. A very big, unforgivable mistake. Holly and I will never come home to you. Please. Alex, she screamed, her cries echoing through the car. I want a clean break, and if you agree to it, I will give you $30,000 in cash. I offered. I saw her face change, and a new resolve replaced the tears. No, she yelled. I will fight you in court for everything. There is no way you lost the house. You are too smart for that. Crap. She was right, and now she had me on the back foot. Okay, Polly. I'll put it this way. I started. You will never get a penny out of me. She moved her hips round and fronted up to me. I'll fight you for everything and more. Alex, you've no money. Holly and I will move my assets around so much. You will spend a fortune trying to track down the money. I'm smart, remember. So by the time your solicitor finds it, you would have racked up a bill that would wipe out any gain. I suggest you take the money I'm offering, or I funnel that away too. A call, I said sternly, and never letting my eyes leave hers. You junk? I loved you and gave you children, and this is how you treat me, she said angrily. Thanks to me, our girls will go far. They won't be liars or cheats, and they will be selfless and not selfish like their mother. So take the money and fudge off out of my life. My anger was beginning to come to the surface, and she looked at me as though I was a stranger. Okay, she spat. I'll take the money and agree to the divorce. Good. I'll get it arranged. With that, she got out of my car and slammed the door shut. Seconds later, she sped away and out of the car park. The following day, I filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery, and a week later, I arranged to meet Holly at the girls' flat. The sale of my house had gone through, but I held off investing it until the papers were signed. I attempted to be civil in front of the girls, but it was a struggle. I handed Holly the cash, and she signed the papers. I kissed the girls goodbye and wished Holly good luck. As I was about to leave, she just burst into tears again, but I got the feeling they were just for the girls' benefit. Sophie and Ava looked at me and raised their eyebrows. Like they knew. See you next weekend. Dad, Ava said as I walked to the door. I walked back into the room as Holly continued sobbing and nobody paying any attention to her. I suddenly realized what Ava was talking about. Oh yeah, the Coldplay gig. Everyone is looking forward to it. Will we be meeting you guys in London, or shall we travel together? Sophie asked. I'll speak to Amy and let you know in the week. I said finally before leaving. As I walked out the door, I heard Holly shouting something, but I chose to ignore it and left.